Few games have had as big an impact on gaming as Blizzard's behemoth known infamously as WoW. Being one of the most played games of the past 2 decades, World of Warcraft is the quintessential MMO. When someone brings up MMOs, it's usually WoW that first comes to mind, for most people. In fact, I'd put it not only as one of the most influential MMOs of all time, but arguably it's one of the most influential games of all time, though that's a debate that could last forever. And WoW's legacy extends past Warcraft. It's arguably the biggest contributing factor for Blizzard's success as a gaming giant, spawning spin-offs, expansions, comics, and even a theatrically released film. Which brings us to a controversial part of WoW's legacy servers. A WoW legacy server is essentially a server that restores WoW to how it was at a previous date, say when it was released or right after certain expansions. The main reason people wanted to see this for so long is because of an idea that WoW was better in the past, that the simplicity and the community were different. They were better, and there were stronger bonds between players. And maybe they have a point. WoW today does feel very different from, as they call it, vanilla WoW. Which may be why they're finally bringing it back, instead of sticking to what they said previously.
And by the way, you don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
Is this even a good idea? Why are some players so excited, and why are others so against classic servers? And it's easy to say that this is all just nostalgia, that people are experiencing a big case of rosy retrospection. But that's not quite right. Sure, positive nostalgia plays a part in it, even a large part, but it isn't the sole reason. Classic WoW was just, essentially, a different game. First off, things weren't handed to you. That's not to say things were impossible to get, but it was certainly much harder to get good gear. Good drops were rarer and experience was quite difficult to get, in large part because mobs were much more difficult to fight. This made defeating tough enemies and getting those special loot drops so much more exciting, and more importantly, they felt more rewarding. In WoW now, there's no difficulty completing dungeons or raids, and getting the best gear isn't really a big deal. In vanilla WoW, when you saw someone decked out in good armor, you were in awe. It was actually an impressive thing to see. Plus, things were new. Every zone, dungeon, creature, item, everything you found was a new discovery. It was a sense of wonder, just the feeling that comes when you saw something new and exciting. You looked at the map and wondered, what could be in this area? How do I even get there? What is the story of this place or these people? It was almost literally a whole new world to discover and explore, which is another part, exploration. You had to explore in classic WoW. In order to do some quests or even raids and dungeons, you had to go through some dangerous areas, which posed a real threat. Some enemies were very strong. You wouldn't even dream of going anywhere near them without a whole group. It really gave the world a sense of scale and grandeur. There was no flying, fast travel was very limited, and you actually had to get to the dungeons rather than just queuing in the capital. This made everything seem like a new adventure rather than an activity. Getting to the dungeon was as much of an adventure as the dungeon itself. It made it necessary to see the world and how large it really was by making the players traverse it. Embarking with your friends to get somewhere, not positive if you'd even reached there safely, and finding things along the way was all an integral part of the game. This often led to you bumping into other players, and then making new friends along the way, as they'd sometimes even join you on your adventure. And maybe that's the core of it. What is often talked about and often dismissed outright by naysayers is the community aspect of classic WoW. There didn't feel to be any disconnect between players. It really encouraged getting to know other people. In fact, it made it almost mandatory, because you really needed help when doing a lot of the more dangerous things in the world. The role-playing aspect was there too. People got into character, or at least class, and you could spend a lot of time just talking in character with people. Between fights in most dungeons, players had to heal up, which took time. So you'd spend it chatting, talking about what to expect next, and getting to know one another. And this is where the main information for players was likely to come from. Because it was just so fresh, there weren't guides and walkthroughs of everything. Remember, the game launched in 2004, a year before YouTube was even created, let alone popular. So you'd hear things from players. They'd tell you some hints, let you know what to expect during a raid or dungeon, or give you the latest scoop on a quest. This really brought people together. It's why we hear stories of people who met and even married over WoW.
How did you meet your wife? playing World of Warcraft.
You met your wife playing World of Warcraft?
I did.
Because it really felt like the game made you get involved with others in the community. It could even be argued that the game was less casual, which meant the player base was a lot more dedicated to the game, which made them more interested and involved, though that one's up for debate. WoW nowadays doesn't have the same feel. There's a walkthrough and an in-depth guide to everything, which means players can just follow the guides to maximize their efficiency. Raids and dungeons are easier and are completed with far fewer people, so there's not as much planning involved. There's no interludes in the dungeons, which means you can just run through them without much downtime, so you're not chatting as much. And you can immediately fast travel almost anywhere, or fly if you need to, which means you're not traveling or meeting people along the way. What I'm saying is that really, these are two different games with different gameplay aspects. Classic WoW is not better than WoW nowadays, and we can't be blinded by the veil of nostalgia that it's a perfect thing we all miss. But that doesn't mean WoW nowadays is better than vanilla either. I don't think this is an objective argument, I think it's a subjective one. If you like the grind, the bigger rewards, and the closer community factor, and you don't mind or you even enjoy the longer travel and time spent in the game, you're probably a fan of Classic WoW. And if you don't like the grind, didn't enjoy the huge raids, and are enjoying WoW now, then enjoy WoW now. But to those hoping to return to this perceived golden age when WoW was the best thing in your life, I don't think that's coming back. That sense of discovery, that feeling of community, there's no reason to feel them again. We already explored the world. We already know how to do all the quests, raids, and dungeons. Gaming as a community has changed in the past years, and I don't think the current time period will allow vanilla WoW to capture our hearts like it did before. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nostalgia will come and sweep us off our feet, and we can feel that giddy joy of classic WoW again. Sure, I'm skeptical, but hey, there's something to be said about being hopeful. After all, as much as we were told...
And by the way, you don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
Maybe in the end, it's exactly what we'll have been wanting.